and we will have a live conversation with Democratic gubernatorial candidate David Jolly. Going to be joining us live inside our
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon, too, and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. It's been a busy last few hours of live streaming. If you've been with us here on Fox Local, and if you're just joining us on the TV side, we appreciate your time this afternoon. I want to let you know some of what we've got coming up in our show. A little bit later, we're going to be speaking with Congressman Mike Haridopolos, joining us to talk about the government shutdown as it stretches on now day 36, the longest government shutdown in history, continuing to track a lot of impact from that in a lot of different areas. So we will have more on that coming up in just a little bit. But we begin our show today talking about the 2026 governor's race here in Florida. And I am pleased to have one of those candidates live in our streaming studio here right now. This is former Congressman David Jolly, and candidate for the Democratic nomination for governor.
That's
Congressman,
right.
We appreciate you joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So I want to start by talking big picture here.
Sure.
Obviously, yesterday was election day.
That's right.
Across the country, and some high-profile races that we
That's
saw
right.
Democrats perform well in
That's right.
states, New Jersey, Virginia, and I just wonder if you watch that as a Democratic candidate in a very red state, if you watch that and picked up some lessons that you think Democrats could learn from that?
Well, I think it affirms what I've heard in over 113 community events across the state of Florida in the last 4 months since I've been running, which is people are desperate for change. They're screaming for change. We are a nation gripped by an affordability crisis. It is different in every state, right? In the state of Florida, it might be your homeowner's insurance bill. It might be the fact that you can't afford rent. It might be the fact car insurance is up or your utility rates are going up. But we're a state that is gripped by an affordability crisis, and everywhere we go around the state, people are screaming for change. And so you saw Virginia and New Jersey elect Democratic governors, outperform where Republicans and Trump were 1 year ago this week, essentially, because frankly, the incumbents aren't listening. And in Florida, look, we have had Republican control of Tallahassee for 30 years. There are policies available right now to reduce the cost of insurance, to reduce taxes, to reduce the cost of utilities. Those policies are available, but my Republican friends are ideologically opposed to him. And I respect that, but I'm offering change. I'm actually trying to fight the affordability crisis. And I would also say here in the state of Florida, we're a state exhausted by culture wars. We need to get back to a state where everyone is welcomed and empowered, regardless of the color of your skin, where you were born, who you love, or who you worship.
You talk about affordability, and that is an issue that we saw was really top of mind for voters across the country,
That's right.
according to the exit polls and just about every kind of race that was watched nationally.
Yeah.
It seems like, why do you think that is playing into the hands of Democratic candidates right now?
50% of the state of Florida does not have 2 weeks worth of savings to survive a disruption in health care, a disruption in food security. If you're on SNAP or a flat tire on your car, whatever it might be. So 50% of the state suffers from economic anxiety, and they're looking at government saying, please help us, and government's not helping us. And so that is real, right? So why can Democrats step into this moment and win? People are desperate for change. They're looking at Republican leadership and say, I'm not getting it from you. But as Democrats, we've got to offer solutions, right? And I lead with 3 values everywhere I go that are bigger than the Democratic Party. They're rooted in our party, but bigger. The economy should work for everybody. Everybody. We shouldn't condemn success. We should congratulate it, but the economy's leaving people behind. The government has a role to make sure we have access to quality health care, affordable health care, excellence in public education that you don't have to pay tuition for, safe communities, fighting crime but not fighting communities. There's a role for government. And the 3rd value is what used to be, I thought, a Republican value. We should be a government that stays out of your bedroom and your doctor's office and your library and celebrate everybody from every walk of life. And so I think voters are looking at Democrats saying, look, maybe it's a certain type of governor in New Jersey, a certain type of governor in Virginia, maybe it's a certain type of mayor in New York, but in Florida as well, if all I'm hearing are the values of an economy working for everybody, government providing access to health care and education, and a place where I'm welcome and my kids and grandkids want to stay, those are our democratic values, and we win on those. But they're bigger than our party itself, which is why we get independents and Republicans in this moment where people are desperate for change saying, I'm willing to consider a Democrat this cycle.
I've got to ask you, though, Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist candidate winning the New York City mayor's race, Republicans seem poised to make him an albatross around the neck of Democrats across the country. Does that concern you?
Look, I don't think he's the future of the party, but he's the future of New York City because New York City voters want him, and God bless him for doing that. Look, he's responding to New York voters. I'm responding to Florida's voters. Mamdani's answers in New York are not Jolly's answers in Florida. They're very different. But as Democrats, I don't think we should worry about whether we need to go left or go right. The question is, are we lifting everybody up? Are we lifting everybody up? And I respectfully say it about my Republican friends in Tallahassee, they're not. They're leaving people behind in this economy. They're attacking government. They're cutting health care. They're cutting your SNAP and your food security programs, and they're trying to insist that this state should only belong to one type of person who believes in one type of God, who looks a certain way. So yeah, Mamdani did great in the city. God bless him. That's who the city wanted. Virginia elected Spanberger. New Jersey elected Mikey Sherrill. In Florida, they're going to elect David Jolly. We're all different, but we're fighting for values that lift everybody up.
Let's talk about the governor's race here specifically. In 2026, you now have another high-profile challenger in the Democratic primary, Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings, who filed last week, set to make an announcement tomorrow in Orlando. Your reaction to him entering this race?
God bless him. He's had a wonderful career of public service. He served for a very long time, and I think he is suggesting to voters he has more to offer. That's a conversation between him and voters. His entry is inconsequential to the task before me. When I got into this race, I knew what I had to do. Go meet every voter across the state of Florida, Democrat, Independent, and Republican, and talk about how we're going to fix the affordability crisis and return Florida a place where everyone is welcome. That's a conversation between me and voters, not me and Jerry. And so you won't really hear me talking about what Jerry's running on. Jerry can talk about what he's going to run on. I know what I'm running on. The task before me is to meet every voter. I'm not asking to just be a governor for Democrats. I intend to reflect Democratic values and to turn out Democratic voters, but I'm asking to be a governor for everybody in this state, regardless of your voter registration.
At the same time, if you're going to be a governor for everyone, you do have to get out of the Democratic primary. And we have heard some Democrats express concerns about the fact that you used to be a Republican.
Sure.
How do you answer those concerns for members of the Democratic base here in Florida?
I don't think the problem in politics are people who change. I think it's people who won't change. And, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it seems a lot like Charlie Crist. Charlie Crist spent 10 years trying to convince us he hadn't changed. I talk about my my change, right? My values haven't. I've always fought for an economy that should work, a government that provides services and a place where everyone's welcome. But I've changed on some issues, right? On reproductive freedom, that's an issue that over 10 or 15 years, I moved from wrongly applying my faith convictions to a constitutional question to fully supporting Amendment 4 and Roe and Casey on issues of guns, right? I went in with a fairly traditional Republican view in Congress, and after the Pulse nightclub shooting and after school shootings, I realized we got to do something differently. Now I'm an aggressive advocate for gun violence prevention legislation. Yeah, I've changed. I think that's a good thing. Critics who hit me on it, I think the problem, again, is people who look at change as bad. I look at change as good. And so I would also say this to my Democratic friends. If you're looking for a fighter, as a Republican in Congress, I was the only one who stood up against our president, Donald Trump, before he was ever elected and said, I'm not going that way. I left the party. I was willing to lose my job, and I did, standing up to this president, standing up to Republicans. And as we look at other Democrats who may enter this race, I would ask, in the last 10 years, have they shown the mettle and courage to stand up to Republicans, to Ron DeSantis, to our Attorney General? Or have they decided to sign ICE agreements when perhaps they shouldn't have? That's a real conversation to have.
Republicans hold a major advantage when it comes to voter registrations here in the state. And so if you do emerge from the Democratic primary, run in the general election, you would have to win over some of the NPA voters, the independents, or even some Republicans. So how do you do that?
Here's the good thing. You don't have to be a Democrat to vote for a Democrat. and my job is to build a coalition where enough people say, I want change, and it's okay that it's a Democrat, or I'm excited that it's a Democrat, right? We need to build that coalition. What Lawton Childs and Bob Graham referred to as the responsible administration of government. Are we making sure your kids can get a good education? Is your community safe? Can you get to work without sitting in traffic? Are we going to lower your insurance bills or not? I'm not asking voters in this race to litigate the President of the United States. We've got a U.S. Senate race to do that, so go do that. But I would tell you also, voters are already showing us they're willing to vote for a Democrat. This year, in our congressional special elections in Florida, one on the Space Coast, one in the Panhandle, Democrats outperformed by 15 or 16 points. Not because there were more registered Democrats, but because independents and Republicans started voting for Democrats. That's how we win next November.
I want to just kind of get into one more thing here, and that's the issue of affordability here in Florida. We have seen, a crisis in some ways. We have seen a discussion, a really big discussion focused on property taxes. I know this is something that you've weighed in on as well. We've seen some proposals from the state house, what kind of their plan, what they want to do, and say, basically, here's all the options, leave it up to voters. I'm curious your take on kind of what we're seeing out of Tallahassee right now when it comes to those proposals.
The affordability crisis in Florida manifests itself primarily through access to housing, rents, insurance, taxes. And so we can tackle all three of those, right? Right now, if a local community wants to control development, and they want affordable housing or workforce housing, and they cap the rate of rent increases, too many times Tallahassee steps in and says, we don't want you to do that. That sounds too much like rent control. Let's get Tallahassee out of it. Let's let local communities determine how to zone and how to allow for development. If it's affordable housing, if it's workforce housing for people of certain occupations or certain incomes or certain geographies, let local communities determine how to best contain the rising rents. And when it comes to home ownership, we could reduce property insurance by 60 to 70% if we had a state catastrophic fund for insurance, remove hurricane coverage from the private market. We should be a party, and I will be a governor that fights for tax relief as well. I'm not sure Republicans in Tallahassee know what they're doing. They've got 8 different proposals. Ron DeSantis just wants to eliminate taxes, not worry about revenue, defund the police and our schools and clean water. But I do think as Democrats, we need to lead with some ideas. I think we need first-time homebuyer tax relief, right? That first-time homebuyer who buys from someone who's had a 20-year homestead who's benefited from Save Our Homes, that new homebuyer sees their tax bill jump by 200, 300, 400%. So we should help them out. Is it a $150,000 homestead exemption, a 3, 4, 5-year step up in basis? We should work towards tax relief responsibly that ensures we still have revenue for what we need.
Former Congressman David Jolly, really appreciate your time.
Good to be with you.
And thanks for joining us here on Florida Live this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. Garrett Wymer here, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local YouTube and on Fox 35 TV. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, where we take a look at some of the big stories in the Bay Area. And for that, we go to Fox 13 Tampa Bay senior content producer Nancy Gay, who joins us live from the Fox 13 newsroom in Tampa. And Nancy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Garrett. Well, it's been more than a year since Hurricanes Helene and Milton hit this area. And believe it or not, a lot of Tampa residents are still rebuilding. And now some of those residents may be able to get an additional $30,000 from the city starting November 17th. So a total of $2 million in city funds will be available to help residents through the Homeowner Hurricane Assistance Program. The program prioritizes the hardest hit neighborhoods and expands the income threshold. Now, qualifying households can receive up to $30,000 for repairs such as roofing, HVAC replacement, interior restoration, flooring, cabinetry, as well as tree removal. Now, to qualify, applicants must live within the city of Tampa limits and earn no more than 140% of the area's median income, which is roughly about $160,000 for a family of four. Tampa homeowners who previously received aid through the city's Homeowner Disaster Assistance Program earlier this year, however, are not eligible. Now, residents, they can apply online or by calling the city's housing information line. Applications will be accepted on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. from November 17th all the way through December 12th. Now, as I mentioned, the city said it will prioritize those hardest hit neighborhoods that saw the most severe flooding and storm impacts. And some of those neighborhoods include Forest Hills, Palmetto Beach, and south of Gandy, as well as Port Tampa. Now, income limits for the HHA program have been increased to accommodate more families. City officials recommend anyone with questions about the program and the types of documents that they will need to provide for the application, they are advised to call the city's housing information line sometime before November 17th. Garrett?
All right, and our second story in the Tampa Connection, Nancy, learning more about a Largo music producer suing Diddy.
Yes, that's right. Jonathan Hay has come forward and said that he is John Doe in a lawsuit against the rapper. Now, Hay is a longtime producer and publicist who said his professional relationship with Diddy began in 2020. That year, the estate of Notorious B.I.G. reached out to Hay about a remix project that would reimagine the late rapper's songs as house as well as techno tracks. Now, the collaboration marked Hay's first time working with Combs, whose label Bad Boy Records launched Biggie's career. Hay said he later traveled to Los Angeles for a promotional photo shoot for the project, and according to his lawsuit, that's when the first assault occurred, alleging that Combs engaged in sexually explicit behavior in front of him without consent. In 2021, Hay said he was invited to an interview in Los Angeles to discuss the same project, but claims that the meeting turned into a setup. In court documents, he alleges that he was physically restrained, his head was covered, and he was taken to another location where Combs attempted to sexually assault him again. Hay said the trauma from those encounters left him struggling with depression, and he began having suicidal thoughts. He anonymously filed the lawsuit as John Doe in July of 2025, but Hay said he decided to reveal his identity publicly after other lawsuits surfaced against Combs and federal agents raided the rapper's homes earlier this year. He added that he decided to come forward publicly because of those lawsuits, after those lawsuits against Combs were filed, because he hopes to empower other victims to speak up. Now, the Largo Police Department confirmed it assisted the Los Angeles Police Department in its investigation, and the case has been referred to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges. Garrett?
And finally, Nancy, a sad update from the Humane Society there, and kind of a trend that they're seeing right now.
Yes, the Humane Society of Tampa Bay said they've seen an uptick in people who need to surrender their animals since the government shut down. Now, these are families who love their pets but simply cannot afford food or veterinary care. Now, to help, the Humane Society of Tampa Bay, they run a pet pantry program that gives away small bags of dog and cat food for free every Tuesday and Saturday from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. In addition to the free food, the pantry now offers collars, leashes, dishes, crates, beds, toys, and canned wet food for suggested donations, but ultimately all of those items are free of charge. They are designed to offset the cost of caring for a pet during these tough economic times. Now, the Humane Society says donations are critical to keeping the shelves stocked. The community can help by dropping off dry or wet pet food, litter, cleaning supplies, or they are also welcome to make a monetary contribution. Now, the Humane Society of Tampa Bay also runs Anna Meals. That's a delivery program that brings pet food and supplies directly to elderly or homebound residents who can't make it to the shelter. And the Humane Society also operates a low-cost animal hospital offering vaccinations, spay and neutering services, and microchipping. And Garrett, throughout the month of November, they are waiving exam fees entirely to try to help make veterinary cares more affordable, especially during this difficult time. You know, as we know, a lot of people are still furloughed if they were working for the federal government. Yeah, tough time, and just another example of people having to make tough choices right now if they're working without pay or laid off, furloughed, whatever the case may be. Certainly nice to see, these organizations stepping up and doing what they can to try to alleviate that, because the last thing you want is someone have to give up their pets, who are, for many of them, are members of the family. Yeah, absolutely. Pets are members of the family, and for a lot of these people, that's one thing that the Humane Society really wanted to stress, is that these are people who love their pets and want to care for their pets, and they are simply in need of some help right now. And again, they are seeing an uptick in animal surrender, so they are just trying to do everything they possibly can to try to help these pet owners be able to stay afloat and be able to take care of their four-legged family member. All right, the Fox 13 senior content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us for our Tampa Connection. Thank you. It is time now for our Florida Live forecast, bringing in Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Laurel Blanchard joining us live in the studio now. And Laurel, it has been a beautiful week so far. Yes, it has. We're going to see another cold front kind of move in, maybe bring in a couple of sprinkles. But we're going to be watching a cold front that could be dropping our temperatures down into the 40s through the overnight. Ooh. Taking a look into next week. Yeah, that is going to be chilly. Now, one of the other things I know you're keeping an eye on is the supermoon and the king tides and the issues that can cause in our area here. Yes, and just a little bit of a flashback to the start of October. We had this same thing. So first week of October, we not only had Imelda making its way up the coastline, but also we had a supermoon. And this is actually only the second of a series of 4 supermoons. We had one in October, we're having one tonight, first week of December and first week of January. We're going to be expecting 2 other ones as we take a look at the future. So it is really going to amp up that tide activity over the next couple of days. So supermoon happening tonight. Largest gravitational pull, especially in the water compared to the moon, is going to be happening through the overnight tonight. So tomorrow we are expecting the highest tides of 2025. Wow, and that can have some impacts as well. Oh yeah, for sure. We saw this last month when we had the Ponce Inlet jetty completely get ripped apart, as well as areas across Daytona Beach, Flagler Beach, all up Florida's East Coast. We saw significant beach erosion, and areas especially that they've done a lot of protective acts to kind of combat against beach erosion, putting down that seagrass, setting up seawalls and everything. It's definitely going to be another test, because again, we saw those wave heights probably at about 5 feet in October, but now as we do take a look in November, the moon is actually going to be making a very close pass to the earth, and so with that we could be seeing those tides up to 7 feet high. Wow. Yeah. All right, and then already bracing for those cool temperatures. That's cold temperatures. I was going to say, that's not cool. That is cold temperatures. I've had my windows open the past couple nights. It's been refreshingly chilly, but that's just cold. That's just straight up cold. Yeah, we don't want that, but at least we're not going to be seeing the snow and some things that other parts of the country might be seeing. Yeah, so. That is true. Some areas may be seeing their first flurries of the season. Ooh, could be worse. Yep. Well, Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Laurel Blanchard, we appreciate you joining us for our Florida Live forecast. Thanks, Garrett. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35 TV. We are continuing to track some big news, including with some impacts in our area as in the aftermath of a scary plane crash in Louisville, Kentucky yesterday, where a UPS cargo plane crashed shortly after takeoff. A large explosion and apocalyptic scenes of black plumes of smoke billowing up from that crash site. This afternoon, we know 9 people were killed in that crash, a number of others injured, and that death toll, the governor saying earlier, could go up, hopefully only to 10, but they do expect it to rise in the coming days and hours. Meanwhile, that happening as we are also seeing impacts on air traffic because of the government shutdown. So a lot of different topics to cover here when it comes to air travel here in the United States. And joining us live now to talk about some of these issues, Dr. Michael McCormick, an associate professor and the program coordinator of air traffic management at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Dr. McCormick, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thank you, Garrett. It's a pleasure being on.
Dr. McCormick, I first want to get your reaction to this crash in Louisville. We talked about the scenes. It's just scary and heartbreaking to see. Just as someone who has so many years of experience in this industry, just want to get your thoughts on what we saw.
Garrett, of course, my sympathy goes out to the families of those who unfortunately were victims of this horrific plane crash. And as we've seen from all the video, it indeed looks horrific. That was an MD-11 that was fully loaded on its way from Louisville, Kentucky to Honolulu, Hawaii. That means it had not just a lot of cargo on board, but a fuel load that was filled to the max. So when that aircraft crashed, you can see the havoc and the fire and flame from that much fuel. Of course, there's many questions, and people are already speculating on what could have caused this tragic event. And it's way too early for us to come to any conclusion. And we need to leave that to the professional investigators at the Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board. As we've known from the past, they are professionals who will get to the bottom and come up with what caused this accident, and then come up with what we need to do to prevent something tragically happening like this again.
Dr. McCormick, I want to shift gears here a little bit because we are also seeing a number of impacts, including here in Central Florida, but across the country, increasing delays and cancellations of flights as the government shutdown continues, and we're seeing staffing issues within these air traffic control towers. I'm just curious if you could shed some light for us on the difficulties and why we see these delays and cancellations when there is understaffing of these towers, and just some of the challenges that go into making sure everything is covered and everything can stay safe when it comes to so many planes in the air.
So, Garrett, the air traffic control system in the United States was already stressed prior to the government shutdown. It's been well publicized that the FAA is short about 3,000 controllers across the United States. And then we had the government shutdown. So previously you had controllers that were working long days, many working 6-day weeks. Since the shutdown, we have controllers who have been coming to work for over a month now, working 6-day work weeks, 10-hour days. They have the stress of their profession. Now they have stress in their personal life of not receiving any income. So they don't have what they need. They don't have the resources. They don't have the finances for simple things like putting fuel in their car for getting back and forth to the air traffic control facility, for paying for daycare. Maybe they have student loans they need to pay back. Many controllers are young and just starting out in their careers, and they have to worry about finding a place to live. They have to pay for getting a new driver's license, registrations for their car. The expenses pile up. And in a short-term government shutdown, you can take on some additional credit card debt and probably make it through a week or two. But as you enter a second month, you can no longer do that. So that financial burden puts now a personal stress upon our lives. So they have the work-life stress, the personal life stress. They come together, and it really eats at you as an individual. So controllers have to make tough decisions. They need to be 100% on the job when they're working. And if they are at the point where they're breaking and no longer able to be 100%, then you need to do the right thing. And that is, you can't come to work. You don't compromise safety. And that's what we're seeing happening across the system. Since the government shutdown, it would be normal to see maybe one or two short-staffed facilities in the country triggering what's known as a staffing trigger. Now what we're seeing, in fact, last Friday, there were 38 air traffic control facilities across the United States that reached that limit of a staffing trigger, which resulted in 13 ground delay programs. That meant cancellation delays all across the United States because of what's happening with the shutdown.
Well, we will continue to monitor that. Dr. Michael McCormick, Associate Professor and Program Coordinator of Air Traffic Management at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. We always appreciate your expertise. We know you have years of experience, and you always are generous with your perspective. And thank you so much for joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thank you, Garrett. Have a good day.
You too. We'll give you a live look right now at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. It is day 36 of the government shutdown. It is now the longest government shutdown in history. Still a lot of questions about where things go from here. We heard from Republican leadership and Democratic leadership earlier today. The Democrats saying they want another meeting with President Trump. And to negotiate some of what they have been calling for when it comes to the extension of the ACA subsidies. Joining us live now to talk about the government shutdown and other topics here is Congressman Mike Haridopolos, a Republican representing Florida's 8th District. And Congressman Haridopolos, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thanks, Garrett. Great to be on.
First of all, before we jump into the shutdown, first, I just want to get your thoughts on the election results we saw last night. We talked earlier. We've been talking about that a lot today. And I'm curious from a Republican perspective, if seeing the Democrat victories in some of these high-profile races, if you believe that the GOP has some adjustments to make to its message, especially as this shutdown continues.
Well, first and foremost, it was a good night for the Democrats. There's no doubt about it. They won their two blue states. New Jersey and Virginia have been increasingly blue states through the years. They had a nice victory. Of course, the most shocking one, I think, to most people was the fact that a self-avowed communist or socialist, whatever you want to call him, in New York City is now the mayor of New York City without any experience whatsoever. So I wish the people in New York City the best. But that said, we need to adjust our message in this way. As you know, when we took office, as the voters gave us the majority, we inherited a big problem. Food prices were up over the last 4 years by 30%, gas prices by 50%, and of course, rent prices also up around 30%. We inherited a very inflated economy, and we've done everything we can to try to turn that economy around. And we need to remind voters of the incredible work that's been done over the first 12 months, but there's a lot more work to do to make sure that our economy is strong and people can afford so many things that are going out of their reach after 4 years of economic failure under the Biden administration. So we got a lot of work to do, but we've tried our best to do that with a variety of programs, most obviously being making sure those tax cuts that were enacted many years ago stayed in place, and we offered tax relief to people earning tips and overtime, let alone businesses that wanted to make investments. So a lot of work to do in educating voters, and hopefully a year from now we'll perform a lot better. We are
seeing increasing impacts of this government shutdown. We talk about, talk often about SNAP benefits. Just before you came on, we were talking about air travel, which is something that we have seen here in Central Florida and at the Orlando International Airport. But we shouldn't lose sight as well of the tens of thousands of federal workers here in Florida who are either not getting paid, working without getting paid, or are furloughed and not getting paid. And so I think there's just continuing to be increasing concern as this continues to drag on with really not a whole lot of resolution in sight. Where do things go from here, Congressman?
Well, Garrett, it's a fair question. I'm incredibly frustrated. As you know, I voted yes to keep the government open, as we all did it among Republicans in the House of Representatives. And as you know from your basic political science classes or government classes, that now it's in the Senate's hands. And at this point, Democrats are unwilling to join Republicans in keeping the government open. And as your guest just talked about with the air traffic controllers, this is a dangerous situation they put the United States in, especially as we head towards the holiday time period. It's why we've asked Democrats to simply reopen the government. After all, you and I are paying for it, and get into the discussion about how we lower costs, whether it be on health care or other matters. Again, as I mentioned, the good news is that gas prices are down, and we're also seeing inflation held in check despite the fears and concerns that people had about the tariff issue. So we feel like we're doing the right thing by voting to keep the government open. I just hope the Democrats will join it in that crusade, because, again, people are working hard. They're not getting paid, not just our air traffic controllers or people who are not getting their SNAP benefits, but maybe most importantly, our men and women in the military. And so we need to open up the government. They've made their political tantrum or point, whatever you want to call it. Let's get the government open and work on problem solving instead of playing politics.
Your colleague, Byron Donalds, has said he supports the push by the president to get Senate leadership to get rid of the filibuster in order to reopen the government. Do you support that?
Well, that's something that the Senate is going to decide. I'm a proud member of the House of Representatives. We moved in our correct direction, that being the vote to keep the government open back on the 19th of September. And we think it's the right thing to do. The Senate will have to decide whether they want to keep the filibuster in place. I think the common sense thing would be that if we do have a, quote, government shutdown, I believe that workers deserve to be paid and everyone should get on the job, because, again, all of us are paying our taxes. That's not been suspended at all. The Senate's got to make that tough decision. I know that in talking to some of the senators, they're worried that there might be changes or big changes to the United States Supreme Court. That would be a concern. Other people worried about maybe areas like Washington, D.C. becoming a state, maybe some changes to the protections of the Second Amendment, that meaning gun rights like we have here in Florida and around the country. So I think you need to tread cautiously there, but that's a decision that the Senate needs to make, and I know that they're working with President Trump to see what might be the best way to go. But the smart thing to do, as I've mentioned over and over again, why don't the Democrats just open up the government? They're not doing anything good for anybody by keeping it closed. We all recognize the issues we want to discuss, be it health care or otherwise.
The House hasn't been in session for almost 50 days now. Do you think at some point the Speaker should call the House back into session and offer up some alternative kind of solutions here?
Well, again, it's hard to negotiate with yourself. Let me just say that first and foremost. When we went to the Democrats before this whole mess began, we went to the Democrats and said, look, you always supported CR. That being said, let's run this CR, a continuing resolution to keep the government open, a clean one, by the way, no politics for Democrats or Republicans, till January. They said, no, we want to have it November 21. So we agreed, meaning we compromised ahead of time. They changed their mind and, of course, voted to shut down the government. And here we are. That being said, I don't know how you negotiate against yourself, because, as I mentioned, as a former history teacher myself, the House has done its job. We sent it over clean, meaning that something that the Democrats have done 13 times during the Biden years. And here we are kind of stuck waiting for the Senate to lob something back at us. I don't know how I can negotiate against myself. I'm not asking for an upper hand in these negotiations, considering, again, it's a clean CR, meaning no changes. So we're going to have to kind of wait and see. But in the meantime, my office is open. The people who work with me in my district office and here in Washington, they're not getting paid. I'm not taking a paycheck in this entire shutdown either. And I know it's pretty insulting to me when you see a lot of Democrats saying, well, I'm going to keep my paycheck because I need to make my mortgage payment. Well, what about those federal workers who aren't getting paid? And the hypocrisy is really getting high at this point. So I don't know how we really change the system short of the Democrats saying, let's reopen the government. And I want to have a debate about Obamacare. I think there's fraud, waste, and abuse, and we can show that in many fronts. I don't know if they're afraid of that debate or they just want to kind of keep on spending money that's simply not up here in Washington.
Last thing here, Congressman, we appreciate your time this afternoon. I want to get your thoughts on President Trump announcing his plans to re-nominate Jared Isaacman as the administrator of NASA. I know you represent the Space Coast. Would like to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I think Jared Isaacman is a fantastic choice. I was optimistic when he was first elected earlier this year. I think he's the right blend of public and private interest. And as you know, with SpaceX and Blue Origin and Airbus and all these other companies, these are public-private partnerships. So what better person to have than a person who understands the private sector and the public sector, who's actually gone into space. Jared, I think, will be a welcome addition to the team here. He'll work closely with Secretary Duffy from the Department of Transportation to make sure that NASA continues on its mission. And remember, if you don't recall, back in July, we added $10 billion to NASA. So we have made a huge investment to make sure we're winning the space race. There's been over 90 launches here at Kennedy Space Center, over 160 across the United States this year alone. We are clearly #1 in space. And as the president always says, you can't be #1 on Earth if you're #2 in space. And so I look forward to working with Jared to make NASA even stronger. We want to get back to the moon and potentially to Mars. And I think he's a welcome addition to the team, and I can't wait to work with him every single day.
Congressman Mike Haridopolos, Republican from Florida's 8th District. We appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us here on Florida Live this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thanks for your time.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this. A live look at Times Square in New York City. The city of New York electing a new mayor last night. It's Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist candidate who will take office at the beginning of January. Meanwhile, some law enforcement agencies here in Florida are using the election of Mamdani, to try to recruit officers from the ranks of the New York Police Department and others around the area. We talked with the Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood this afternoon about his push to recruit officers from New York.
It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek at first, but if you look at what this mayor-elect has said throughout his entire career, that he's going to dismantle the NYPD. He's going to go after businesses in that community. So for me, he's selling. I think we should buy. Why should we not want doctors, nurses, teachers, and first responders and business owners who are going to bring jobs into our community? Why would we not want them? They don't want to be there. 50% of the vote is not a majority in the way I look at things. And if you want capitalism and you're a believer in capitalism like I am, and like most of us are here in Florida, I think there's opportunities to come down here to protect us, to serve us, to work in healthcare field, and to bring your business here and give jobs to locals. I just think it's a win-win. I know that I use your term, smack the beehive. I got Democrats screaming at me. I got Republicans screaming at me. Take a chill pill and relax, because this is what I said is nothing different than Governor DeSantis has done. During COVID, he went out and was recruiting people to come to the free state of Florida. We can't hire law enforcement officers. The governor put together a package that has never been seen before. $5,000 signing bonus if you're coming out of state or you're a first-time law enforcement. Tuition reimbursement for your family, and a host of other incentives to get good people to come to Florida. And who wouldn't want that? Because if you listen to anything what this guy is saying, okay, this needs to be a wake-up call to all of us in America. You know, the days of law and order are gone. Okay, that's what's not going to happen. You listened to his speech last night. To me, it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because he's basically warning this is what's going to happen to America. We're going to turn socialist. Now, there's some people believe in that. Great. I don't believe in that. I believe in capitalism. That's what I believe in. And I believe in the fact that you need good law enforcement. You need good elected officials. You need good school teachers. We need doctors and nurses. And we need people to create businesses and create jobs. That's just me. But again, it was said tongue-in-cheek, but clearly it's resonating with a lot of people for good reasons and bad. And again, the door's open. I have some NYPD folks who work for me now. I have folks who have come in from other parts of the country, brought their families here, and they are excellent, excellent deputies. So if I offended you, tough.
So what, I mean, obviously from, political side and everything like that, but what other backlash have you got? Have you gotten the fact that people say, we're already full, there's too many people here?
I've gotten that, and I can tell you something. Whether you run a business, you run a government or whatever, if you stay stagnant, you die. If there's an opportunity to bring hard-working people into the fields that we need, right? Yeah. Medicine, we need nurses. We can't get enough nurses. School teachers, we can't get school teachers. First responders, EMTs, businesses that come in and create jobs. We're the third largest state for a reason. People want to come here, people want to live here, and they want to make this a great place to live. If you stay stagnant, you end up like some of these other states are. That's why it's called the Rust Belt, because they wrap themselves in plastic and they never emerged in anything else. And now the Midwest isn't anything like the Southeast and Southwest part of the country is. I just think you need to take a step back and stop watching the same news show all night that tells you how you should think. Get out and experience the world.
What other backlash have you gotten? Whatever positive, one way or another positive?
I've had people that work for me say they've gotten phone calls from folks up in the NYPD saying, is he serious? What do we need to do to apply? We want to investigate that. People just don't get up and leave their home. There's got to be financial. They have to have the money to do it. So people just aren't going to get up and come to Florida like we're giving something away. But I'll use myself as an example, okay? I worked in the Northeast part. I worked in Philadelphia, and I knew there was a point in time that my style of policing, I was going to be blocked. I was never going to get promoted again. And I came down here 20 years ago, and I think I've done a pretty goddamn good job of protecting my community and assimilating there. So, not that I would say there should be another Mike Chitwood, but if there's people that have my attitude that want to come here and help make this state successful, or in this community successful, why not?
So you've had good and negative, and then you have people who said, are you serious or are you not?
I've had people laugh. I've had Republicans send me emails loud and clear. I've had Democrats send me loud and clear. So to me, that says I'm doing my job. I'm resonating. If I got people hating me, people loving me, people thinking, and I love it. I relish in it.
Sheriff Mike Chitwood earlier today with some strong language there about the push as well. Here is a live look right now at Times Square. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, and we'll be right back. live look right now along International Drive in the tourist district of Orlando. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon. Let's talk a little theme park here and Animal Kingdom, because we're seeing some new things being implemented and also some visible progress on construction there. So I want to bring in one of our theme park experts. He is Theron White, the lead publisher of EYNTK.info. And Theron, we always appreciate you. Thanks for joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
I'm excited to talk theme parks.
Yeah, let's do it. And let's start with Zootopia, because we have talked about this new show at Animal Kingdom, and we're finally getting our first look at it.
That is correct. So it's officially opening up on Friday, but today and tomorrow, if you are a Walt Disney World pass holder, you can join the virtual queue to be able to go and check out this attraction a little bit early. I went and did that today, and I really thought that it was a very, very fun attraction. They have some new 3D effects. They've got some things that you can see inside the show, but honestly, the queue might have been my favorite part. Disney's world building that they did on the inside is a lot of fun. There's like a mouse-sized porta potty, like they're doing construction. They've got special entrances for the animals. They've got little designs on the inside. So it's a fun update. It's something that's a little bit different, and something that I think that is noticeable for parents is it's a little less scary than the version that was there before, which was It's Tough to Be a Bug.
And we've also talked before about this animatronic of Officer Clawhauser. How did that kind of work?
Yeah, it's taking over the spot of where we used to have the previous animatronic Hopper. He used to literally jump out and kind of scare some of the audience that was in there, and he was a main antagonist for the show. Now we've got Officer Clawhauser, who is, I won't spoil it for you, but there's a reason why he gets up there in front of the whole crowd. And he is a very fun animatronic. He's looking around. He interacts not only with the screen, but he looks out towards the audience. He kind of animates and kind of interacts with what's happening up on the screen itself. So that is a really fun little aspect of just, I'm glad we still get an animatronic. You know, we have a 3D show. When we're updating a 3D show, you're always scared they're going to take out some of those tactile effects. There isn't something kind of like the spiders dropping down from the ceiling anymore, but we do still have this animatronic who is a part of the show. And again, no spoilers, but they do explain why he shows up there, and he kind of interacts a little bit with the screen as well.
So we will keep our eyes peeled on that ride. Then folks can start checking that out. I know, Theron, while you were there, you also sent us some video of construction going on that is visible to folks.
Yes, we have gotten to the point of construction now for the upcoming Tropical Americas area coming to Disney's Animal Kingdom. It's currently known as Dinoland USA. It's been there since the beginning, but now Disney is doing a ton of construction to get ready for this new area. They've gotten to the level of construction where there's no amount of walls that can hide this anymore. There's just cranes. There's dirt in the land. Disney's doing their best, with getting people through that land, and they were kind of doing a bit of crowd control to get people to the existing things like going to see Donald or going on the dinosaur attraction. But there is a lot of work they have to do. This new area is expected to open up in 2027. And with that, they basically had to demolish about 80% of the land. We're getting a brand new attraction based off Encanto. We're getting a new kids carousel. We're getting some new areas for restaurants and merchandise. And so it required them to knock down almost everything. And we're even going to see some demolition happen for the dinosaur ride when it closes after its run that's going continually through 2025. A lot is going to change in this area. And if you go to the park right now, you cannot miss this crane or some of the construction. But that means that exciting things are coming up. And again, that's supposed to open approximately in 2027, but we don't really have a season for that yet.
But as you talked about, the dinosaur ride is still open right now. People can still go and check that out, even if it, does it take a little bit of a routing around the construction?
Yeah, you definitely got to go around it a little bit. The original attraction entrance is still there, but the original entrance into the land itself has been demolished at this point. So you kind of got to go around, go towards the Finding Nemo show. Disney's got all the signs set up. That's fine. You're not really going to get lost, but you do have to get rerouted a slightly different way because they are working on, again, a majority of that land. So if you're going in there, it is a little bit weird to see it without the sign. That was my first time going there when they've knocked down that and they've taken out a majority of the dinosaurs and the dinosaur bones and skeletons and everything in there. So it looks very different if that's a view you're used to. But again, in 2027, we're going to have a very, very different look to that land with all new attractions, all new things to do. So get excited, but you got some dirt for now.
Yeah, 30 seconds left here, Theron. But that's when that new land opens, it's really going to kind of change Animal Kingdom.
It's going to be a very different dynamic. They're going from the old school kind of looking like you were in a literal parking lot was kind of the theme for the original. And now we're getting a lush forest in the Tropical Americas area.
All right. Theron White, lead publisher of EYNTK.info. We appreciate your time and thanks for joining us and talking Animal Kingdom. You got the appropriate shirt on there. So we appreciate it, Theron.
Always happy to join.
All right. And we are out of time here on Florida Live. It has been a busy 4 hours today. If you've been with us since we first started live streaming at 11 a.m., covered a lot of ground here. And we appreciate you joining us and hope you join us tomorrow as well. As we wrap up, going to give you this live look at Daytona Beach from our Hard Rock Hotel camera and a nice looking Wednesday afternoon out on the beach. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time.